What's going on, traders? Today we're going to discuss a couple of wedge pattern formations, how we try to dissect, the top gainer for Thursday in a somewhat of a slower market. As you can see here, prior to, this was on Thursday, prior to June 12th, we pretty much dissected the top gainer. So what you want to do is you want to look at the top eight, let's see, that have volume. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So these are the stocks that we were currently interested in prior to Thursday's open. So what you want to do is pretty much look at the float of each one. So you can see in this situation, CVAC had 135 million float, so that doesn't interest me at all. You can see that new HCW had 125,000 shares in volume, so this does not interest me. And you can see that HPP-C, that's something interesting, not there. You can see HUSA and IPA, the float's kind of darker green. So this morning we really only had the top gainers over here. We had 4 tickers here underneath a 10 milli float. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can see that in this situation we had darker green. So that means floats over 10 million. That's hard. That's a bigger float. So during times when the market is kind of slow, what happens is that we pretty much try to run up one of these low float. So since we're in a slower market, we kind of looked in the morning at NEHC. So NEHC popped up. It kind of tried to break $1 and failed. And SOAR, the pretty much came over here, pretty much sold off right at the open. CGTL pretty much sold off at the open. You can see so here. And the only ticker was RSLS. So this ticker was actually the most important thing. In this video, we're going to discuss VWAP reclaim as well as having the right psychology. So right here, so your strategy in the slow market, this is a strategy for a slow market. Strategy for slow market is A. This is a very good strategy, pretty much slow market strategy. Try to pick the stock with the lowest float. Try to pick the stock with the lowest float. Pick the stock with the lowest float. Pick stock with lowest float, preferably under 10 million. So in this situation, we had a couple of gainers here. You can see the gainers over here. You can see and try to pick them from the top gainers. Pick them from the top 10 gainers, top 10 to 10, 5 to 10 gainers. Ideally, is going to be under, ideally, those top 5. Sometimes you're going to have like the 6th, the 7th, the 8th stock running and so forth. So we're going to put that over here. So in this situation, we had pretty much RSLS, say GTL, SOAR, and NH. So right now, watch for them to VWAP reclaim. Watch for them to VWAP reclaim, and use VWAP as your risk. That's pretty much what you want to do here. So in this situation, you can see pretty much RSLS here. We VWAP reclaim right about here. Strategy for a slow market. We VWAP reclaim right about, this is RSLS. We VWAP reclaim right about here, and then pretty much we held VWAP, that red line. Let's see, we can maximize this one just a bit more. So we VWAP reclaim right about here, and then what I did was I used VWAP as my risk, and then I looked at the daily. Try to have a clean chart. Clean chart. That means no resistance on daily. That means, so in this situation, as you can see on the daily here, we broke 276 by the yellow line here. We held 276. So now the next resistance is going to be over here, which is 410. So what I like to do, I don't like to buy it as the ticker comes back to 276 because I don't know whether or not it's going to hold, because you can see this is with the daily breakout. So what I like to do is, like, I like to watch them as they VWAP reclaim, and I try to position myself with a VWAP stop, and I like to sell into the next resistance, which is the pre-market. Um, this is probably a really good strategy. Clean chart, no watch for use VWAP as your risk. Clean chart, no resistance on the daily. That's good. You know, I also look for try to sell into pre-market highs. You know, try to sell when you have more than a 10% position. Try to sell when you have 10% gain. That's probably a strategy you should probably do. Sell into resistance, into pre-market high. And then, look for, and then in the afternoon, actually 30 minutes later, we had a wedge pattern. 30 minutes later, 30 minutes later, we had a wedge pattern. This is a very nice wedge pattern right about here where we broke 350. So you have to buy the breakout of the wedge pattern and sell into the next resistance. So primarily right here, the first resistance as we broke VWAP was the pre-market highs. And then the next resistance as we broke the pre-market highs right here is, the next resistance on the daily. So this was a gap fill kind of chart. So I pretty much drew all my lines of resistance. Then the first resistance was pre-market high, and the next resistance was, the gap fill up to 480. So this was my strategy for a slow market. So over here, you can see that, we initially VWAP reclaimed over here. We kind of went below a bit, and I kind of went long at like 310. And then you can see that 310 we held multiple times, and then we had a huge candle to the resistance point of 556 where I sold. I sold at 340. And then we came back, we kind of formed another wedge, and then I bought it again at around 350, and we ran up to the next resistance point, which was $4. It actually hit 413. I was actually selling before resistance. This is a very nice example of, strategy for a slow market. Pick a stock with the lowest float, preferably on the 10 million. Pick them from the top 10 gainers. In this situation on Thursday, we had three of the top gainers. Um, Three of the top gamers underneath the 10 million. Watch them to VWAP reclaim. You could also buy the dip here. Use VWAP as your risk. This is pretty good. Clean chart, no resistance on the daily. This is pretty good. 30 minutes we had a wedge pattern. So I also like to discuss. This is a strategy for a slow market, and then take 10% gains. Try to sell when you have 10% gains. This is and pretty much I made 10% two times, and this is a very good strategy for a slow market. This stock also had news, so it has to have the criteria. 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 Clean chart. What does clean chart mean? That means that the next resistance point gives you a nice a nice opportunity from 3 to 4. That's a primarily a very normal criteria. 3 to 4. Let's see, we can get it bigger over here. Criteria. Clean chart, low float, under 10 million. Pretty much, pretty much top gainer from the top 5. Clean chart, low float. Maybe it has news. As you can see, it has news. Had a distribution agreement. buy the VWAP reclaim, VWAP as your risk, hold into the next resistance point. So this is kind of like my criteria. Clean chart, that means the daily has no resistance up to the next level. Low float, top gainer from the top five, news distribution agreement, and make sure you trade them between, say, at the market open, trade at market open between like 9:30 to 10:30. Actually 10:30 probably be too late. 9:30 to 10:30, and it pretty much went over here. There was a series of other, in this situation we had a wedge pattern, which I'm going to discuss in my next slide. This is a strategy for a slow market, and also using a wedge pattern, using also wedges to make money in a slower market, make money in a slower market. So in this situation, we're going to talk about also wedges. Let me just get this up to also use. So this is a strategy for a slower market. Let me save that real quick. Strategy for. So as you can see, we had a wedge pattern formation. You can see wedge pattern formation. This is the same criteria. Look for stocks. Look for stocks that are in play. First off, the first, clean chart. We're gonna do the same thing again. Same exact patterns. Criteria. Let's see. Criteria. Clean chart. Low float. Underneath 10 million. News. The only one moving. Clean chart, low float, news, the only one moving, has room to run, past runner, has run in the past, and so forth. I mean, this is just basic criteria to how to find, and then you pretty much take a look at them, and pretty much come into my wedge pattern section. You can see so here that we had a couple of wedges, uh, happen this week. Some of the wedges that happened this week you can see so here. One of the stock happened was VTAC. This is a VTAC. This is third time a charm. This ticker had news. No, you can see so here. No, this stock did not have news. This is third time a charm. So watch wedge pattern formation builds a solid, builds a solid resistance point between. So time to trade these patterns between 7 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. So make sure you got the time right, because sometimes they'll do a fake out on you. In this situation, so third time a try is going to be a successful one. So third time a try is going to be a successful one. This is a nice example how the third time around, this wedge pattern over here we broke out of the pre-market. You can see that in the pre-market we popped up to 55 at 4 a.m. and then we went to 55, and then the third time around we built a higher low, and then we broke out 55, and I sold at 75. This is a nice example. I'm going to go through more examples here because I have plenty of other examples. We're gonna pretty much look at other examples. This is a nice wedge pattern in KZIA. KZIA actually had that happened this week. Let's see. KZIA actually happened this week. You can see KZIA here. A lot of traders try to short this one. KZIA is a low float. KZIA is a low float. Let's see. KZia was a low float. KZia low float. Had news. Low float means, this was a micro float. This was like 650,000 shares float. So this was very, very low float. Had news, has room to run. See, we kind of gapped up to 8 on the daily, and the next resistance would be 13. Gapped up 8, room to, 13. Kizia low float, has news, has room to run, fast runner, time, time was around, between 7 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. Same thing. Has room to run, low flow, clean chart. So that means, you look at the daily right here and you have a candle at 20 million and that went to 13. So 13 is your next resistance. 13 is resistance because of candle here at around 20, 20 million. This is a resistance point right here. This is a really good resistance point to keep that in mind. So you look on the daily and you see where the biggest candle is, and that's gonna be, and you look at the high of that, and that's gonna be, the resistance point. In this situation was 13, and it actually hit 13 on the dot in the middle of the day. So, this is a, so now we're discussing wedge pattern formation, and gonna look at a couple more examples because this thing happens very often, much more often than you might think. Let's see if we can get it much lower here. Let's see, we can see wedge number 2. This is another stock. This happened in the middle of the day, but the majority, the majority of the one, this is RSLS. RSLS was very easy. Actually, we just went over RSLS, but it had the same criteria. Same criteria. You have, the float of RSLS. If you guys remember, the float of RSLS was right about here. You see, so here we went through the float, right about here. So we were this. So the float on RSLS was, you see, so here RSLS, the float was around 1.3 million. So we had an extremely low float. Float is 1.3 million. Low float, news, clean chart. That means the next resistance was at 4. Same thing. Float 1.3, news, clean chart. Past runner. It ran over here. I don't know, from 5 to like 8:30. The next resistance right here is around 4:15. Past resistance is 413. So same thing. We're doing the exact same thing. The only ticker over VWAP, and so forth. This is kind of like how I trade them. You could also buy them as, on the support trend line at around 520 or something, or at VWAP or something like that, or you can buy them, as soon as we break that, what is it, 270, 280. This was a daily breakout. So it broke 280. We came back to the 280, which is the daily breakout resistance. We held that area, and then we came back. I bought it as we broke VWAP, and then we came back. I sold into pre-market high. We came back. I bought the wedge, and I sold into the next resistance point. So trading is more like, a bunch of lines, to tell you the truth. Um, I do have another couple of examples here that I like to discuss that happened this week. This is actually, this happened in the middle of the day. It's important to have trade ideas because trade ideas scans for me stocks underneath 30 million, because it doesn't really happen for stocks that are not low float. It only happens with, it only happens with stocks that are very low float. This is a nice example of PLRZ, another wedge pattern formation. PLRZ seems like we had news on this one. We had news on this one. You can see I pretty much drew all my candles out. You can see that, we had a downtrend break right here, third time a charm. I talk about this many times. Actually, this was fourth time a charm. It's sometimes this fourth time, sometimes this third time, and we broke 105 and we spiked up to the next resistance point. So we were building, so we pretty much came over dollar. Dollar was important, and then you wait for the wedge pattern breakout at 105, and then you draw your next resistance point. If it breaks a dollar, the next resistance is this candle, and the next resistance is this candle. So same thing, PLRZ. PLRZ, I think the float on this one was, I don't really remember. It's got to be on the top gainer somehow. PLRZ low float. Actually, this PLRZ low float. Probably, I think this one was, I don't remember what it was. Really, I have to look. 1 second. So if you don't know what the float is, you go to FinViz and you put PLRZ, PLRZ over here, and then you look at the float. Actually, you can see that shares outstanding is 4 million. So most of the time is going to be a low float underneath 10 million. Usually the share outstanding matches the share of the float. So it's probably going to be also 4 million. So let's do 5 million. Low float, wait for trend, wedge pattern, wedge resistance, breakout. That's important. Pretty much, has news, clean chart. You can see that the next resistance point, if you look at, the daily here, we had this candle over here of 50 million. And then, in this candle here, the resistance came to $1.35. So clean chart means, we look on the daily and we look where all the big candles are at, and we try to pick the high of that, pick the high and low of those candles. You can see so here that, we had this candle here where we had volume and the high was 163. So that's the first resistance. And we had another smaller candle, which the high was 150. Clean chart. It's actually not that, it's clean from $1 to 160. So it has resistance um, at 135 and 165. So you buy the trend and then you buy the breakout and then you sell into the next resistance point. Has resistance 135, 165, but that's plenty for me to make money. Wait, buy wedge resistance breakout, low float, has news, clean chart. But also a past runner. You can say that here we ran from 2 to 70 cents up to 180 past runner and so forth. This is a very nice example of how to do a wedge pattern formation. We have you kind of do the same thing once the wedge pattern, you kind of do the same thing to the other ones. Let's see, we can get a couple of other ones over here. 1 second. Let me look in my book because I have a book, wedge pattern formation, wedge breakout. You can see that in this section. I also have a lot of examples of a wedge pattern. I actually discuss, you can see so here that we pop up. This is also a low float. We pop up here to $1 and then we hit it 3 times. And the third time around, right here, you're combining two things. You're combining a wedge breakout, a round number breakout, and once it breaks $1, it goes to the next resistance. So CAPT is something very similar to what we were just talking about. Let's see, we can see CAPT. It's exactly almost like PLRZ. If we look at over here, let me try to explain the next wedge pattern because it's easier for you guys to see once you are live. Let's see. Let's see. So this is CAPT. This is another example. It's kind of like very similar to CAPT to PLRZ. These two are almost quite identical. Like this stock is almost identical. PLRZ is almost identical to CAPT. You have right here CAPT low float. I don't think it had news. Round number breakout. That's important. Round number breakout because here it breaks $1. You look at the daily for the next resistance point. Right here is the first resistance point. It's right when it breaks $1. And then you draw your next resistance point, which is 140. And pretty much that's going to be the next resistance point. We actually hit 138 on that. So you buy the breakout, buy the break of $1. So I'm just combining multiple time frames. Round number breakout and wedge breakout. So I'm using these two things. Remember how I was saying, using multiple things like a 52-week breakout, a round number breakout, and a wedge pattern breakout. In this situation, we use two setups, and it breaks $1, third time a charm, third time a charm, third time a charm, and you look at pretty much the daily. Where's the next resistance point? The chart is clean chart because I don't see any resistance, but clean chart. I don't see a lot of volume over here, but I do draw the high of each big candles. But I do draw the high of each green candles. I buy it at $1, buy it at $1, sell into the next resistance point at 135, 135. That's plenty for me to make money in this setup. Low float, round number breakout, wedge breakout, third time a charm, clean chart, buy it at $1, sell it into the next resistance point. This is the trade that I did. We're gonna move on to some other examples here that discussing the wedge pattern and how to use it in a slower market. You can see BTOG, third time a charm right about here. This is not really a good example. This is a pre-market breakout right here, right about here. We come up over here to 350 multiple times, and this has the same thing. It has a low float. You can see this is actually congested at around 418, and we actually hit 418. You can see the daily right here, 418. We hit 418. Next resistance was 450. Next resistance 480. So we gap up to around, I don't know, 330. The next resistance 418, and you buy it as, in this situation we had a really nice, wedge pattern formation. Another wedge pattern formation. So you got to have this criteria to select these things. Because if you don't have the criteria, if you trade something that it's not a low float, it might not work so well. You have to understand, like, these stocks have my ingredients. As you can see in this situation, same thing. A reb chart, no resistance till 4. No resistance till 4. Is low float, has news. Low float has news. Let me see, we can pop it all over here. Low float has news. Third time a charm. Third time a charm. Wedge pattern, wedge breakout. You can see right about here that all these things are lining up right here. You have this wedge going on here. You have the breakout point. Let's call it over here. And then I bought as we break this level right here. This level was around 350. You have a wedge pattern. And then I sell it as it goes higher, maybe 410. In this situation, I actually did 10%. So I actually sold it a little way too soon. But soon enough, I did, profit from this setup. With low float has news, third time a charm, wedge breakout. Resistance is no resistance till 4 because this is more of a dirty chart because it has lots of resistance. The chart is not clean; it's dirty because it has lots of resistance at those levels. A dirty chart has lots of resistance, at 418, because you can look at the daily, and you can see that if we zoom in here, there's these two big candles here with the high of 418 and 450. So this is a dirty chart right here. You can see, so by these big candles. So that's a dirty chart. That's where resistance is. Dirty chart. So you need to sell into that resistance. Let's see if we can find some other setup in my wedge. So we did discuss AREB. This is another INHD, but this happened during the middle of the day. This is this is a spring pattern. This is not combined with a wedge pattern. This is just buying of the support. This is more of a spring pattern breakout, but you're using something similar. This is we buy, as you can see. So here, third time a charm. It has worked. On the 6th, I don't know. Uh, Third time a charm. It has worked. Um, we buy is pretty good. This is actually something. This is very similar to what we did here. You can see, so here in this pre-market breakout right here, right here. This is a pre-market breakout. You see VTAC. Third time a charm. We break 55. You can see, so that I'm doing the exact same thing that I did in in KZia. I'm doing the exact same thing I did in VTAC over here. I think this was 55 to 75. So the next ticker would be right about here. We buy, same exact thing. I don't know if it had news or not, but it's the same thing. Low float. We buy. Let's see, we can pretty much we buy low float, has news. I don't know if it had news. No news, but it's a clean chart. That means the next resistance point is like at 14 or something. Clean chart resistance is at 14. So that's plenty of me to make money. You can see this is more of a stock that's beaten up. And the next resistance, I drew it at 14 by drawing this candle over here. And then, third time a charm to break pre-market highs. So you can see, so here that right here we broke the pre-market highs. This is my buy point. So I buy the third time around when it hits the pre-market highs, right about there, and then pretty much I sell it for a profit. And this situation went from $7 to $8.50, so it gave 20% in just a very short period of time. Buying the pre-market breakout at 7, hit 8.50, so that's 20%, and that's it actually went to a high that day of $10. So this stock was very much active. It came back and we held the dip at around 7, and then we went all the way to 10. So I'm doing the exact same thing on all these setups, and they're very similar to each other. If I even draw a trend line on this setup here, but the strategy here is, you can see the uptrend wedge pattern right there. But the strategy here is to pretty much, your it needs to be a low float. You cannot do this. You cannot do this setup by trading. This setup works on bigger floats, but you're not gonna get that big of a move. You can see, so here, that these stocks have much bigger float. The more float it has, the less range is gonna give you most of the time. There's abnormalities of which a higher float has news with Nvidia and runs very fast, but that's very rare. You're doing basically the same thing to every single chart. Um, that so keep this in mind. Keep also in mind, because keep also in mind, like, what are you gonna do? This is a wedge pattern breakout. Wedge pattern breakout. And this is very pretty much your bread and butter to how to nail these movers. That's about it. Make sure you ask me some questions, and I'll talk to you in my next video.